Police officers of Reddit, what was something you saw someone do that made you say wait, is that illegal? My state doesn't allow underglow on normal vehicles, but encourages extra lighting like that on motorcycles. There's a bar behind my house. Sometimes I grab a ladder and hop the fence to get there. One time I was hopping back over and got stopped. The cop ran my DL and said, "You do you." My favorite police incident in my whole life has been the cop that parked his car at a stop sign to give somebody a parking ticket because the bumper was maybe 1 foot past the "do not park beyond this point" sign, while the rest of the car was good. An old lady of Latin descent, 70s I'm guessing, attempts to go around the illegally parked cop car and gets into an accident. She flips out on the cop, screaming at him in Spanglish for being so careless. He just put his head down as this old lady berated him for parking like a ducking asshole. Sometimes I miss Baltimore. Not. Once I was drunk at a bar that only had one toilet for men and one for women, and the lines were way too long during a football game. So I went outside to pee. I ended up getting a ticket for urinating in public. The next day I look up the code the officer cited me for, and it was the equivalent of littering. But you see, in all my glory I actually had the decency to pee into a trash can. So I prepared my defense to show up in court and plead to the judge that I was innocent because you can't litter into a trash can. The officer didn't show up to court, so I ended up getting off, but I still wonder how hard the judge would have laughed in my face. Drunk on an electric scooter. Repeatedly driving around a roundabout, like 25 times in a row. Edit. Where I am in Australia, QLD, it is not illegal. Judging by the comments, it seems to be illegal in Switzerland and Germany, and some US states. Winter, MN. 12 AM. I'm at my dad's house for a visit. He gets too tired to drive me home and tells me to take his truck. I take the truck and head down a steep hill of a street. The truck sounds weird, but I figure it's the 4WD and the snow ice I'm driving on. Police lights behind me. I slowly pull over. I get out of large truck as the officer comes over. "Excuse me, miss. Did you know you're plowing Madison Avenue in the middle of the night?" Me. So that's what all the noise is? I don't know what's going on with this thing. He probably wanted to give me a ticket for stupidity and illegal midnight plowing. Instead, he helped me get the plow up, then followed me home to make sure I was safe. I was pulled over a few years ago for not coming to a complete stop at a yield sign. I had slowed down, looked both ways and for oncoming traffic, and then pulled into the street. There were absolutely no cars on the road. My dog ran out into the street and into the side of a driving car. Crazy lady, whose son was driving, got out and started threatening to call the cops because our dog dented and scratched her car. After she left, my mom called the cops to see if there was anything we could be held accountable for. Cop, was it on your property? Mom, no. Cop, was your dog driving a car? Mom, no. Cop, you're fine. Edit. To be clear, the dent this lady was referring to had white paint marks. The dent was not where our dog hit their car, and we do not paint our dogs. A drunk man dry humping a tree. My friend breaking apart a bundle of bananas and only taking 2. I was 20 when I learned that was totally and completely okay to do. Driving above the posted school zone speed limit when the sign states 20 mph when children are present. Well, then what constant's present? Children inside the school? Children playing well away from the road and the fenced-in yard? Just school hours in general? During after-school sports and activities? No idea. So unless someone's blatantly reckless and an asshole, I won't stop people for driving over the posted 20. Edit. My first ever content contribution to get any recognition on Reddit. Hell yeah. I had a cop try to give me a ticket for sleeping in my car on the side of the road in a residential area. I was too tired to continue driving home after a visit with my sis, so I took a ramp off the interstate and parked and took a nap to avoid an accident. Literally doing what they recommend to avoid endangering people on the road. I forget the charge, but he basically tried to slap me with some fine that particular area gives to homeless people. Homeless people, if they loiter or hang around too long. Took me a full half hour to convince the guy I wasn't homeless. I was leaving to drive the rest of the way home ASAP. and I was doing what I knew to be safe in that the 2 fire engines and 3 squad cars they deployed were insanely unnecessary even if I was. Guy just seemed pissed as I was to get a call in the night from whatever rich Skadapus couldn't handle some guy taking a car nap and minding his own damn business. Since we're on the subject, is it technically illegal to make a right-hand turn at a red light, immediately U-turn, and make a right-hand turn again basically bypassing the red light? I'm assuming no, as long as the U-turn itself is legal, but it feels so cheap and makes me feel so dirty. Apparently you can run a yellow light. My dad got a ticket once for not slowing down enough at a yellow light. Not a police officer. News story about a man in Louisiana who rode his horse home drunk. The officer pulled him over to arrest him and he said that the horse knew the way home. The officer couldn't give him a DUI because he was on the horse and only gave him a ticket for public intoxication. Had a seaplane land in the harbor. Taxied up the boat ramp and parked in a parking lot while also paying the meter while they went for lobster rolls. Apparently it's legal. Every time I walk down the street and smell someone smoking pot, I know it is legal now, but my brain still thinks it is illegal for about the first 2 seconds. Not a police officer. When I was 20, I drove my friend to the liquor store since she didn't have a car at the time. It was being shipped across country since she was moving in a couple days. So, being underage, I stayed in the car. There was a cop sitting in a parking lot across the street. As soon as my friend came back, we pulled out and drove off. Cop followed and pulled us over. Gives me a ticket. Takes the booze. Apparently, you cannot drive with alcohol in a vehicle if you are underage out, even if there is somebody of age in the vehicle. So, in theory, you cannot drive your parents to the grocery store and drive them home if they bought booze. I had never heard of such a thing, and everyone who I have told about this since has also been dumbfounded. I go to my court date. Judge calls my name. I stand at the podium, and they read the charges. After that, the DA just kinda stares blankly. I don't see the problem. There was someone of age in the vehicle. The prosecutor reads the law, statutes, whatever. The DA kinda shrugged her shoulders and said, okay, it doesn't make sense to me, but it's the law. I'm not an officer, but what makes a stop sign legal is well defined. Generally they have to be at least a certain size, a certain height from the ground, and within a certain distance of the intersection or other feature, such as a crosswalk or train tracks. Additionally, the stop signs in parking lots and on private property usually aren't legal even if they are within the legal bounds of size, height, and distance. And there are many of these near me that can't even be argued in court because they are entirely on private property and do not allow traffic onto public streets. So I've been stopped multiple times and had to remind the officer that the stop sign was nowhere near legal. Only once did it cause an actual argument where he had to call it in and they promptly told him that he shouldn't even be pulling people over for that stuff in a mall parking lot anyway. Saw a kid drop a donut on the ground. Nearly radioed for backup before I remembered I could tell the kid to be more careful with his food. Not a police officer, but the viceroy of a trade federation. My boss, let's call him Sidious, asked me to start landing our troops on Naboo despite having ambassadors of a chancellor of a senate on board our ship. Although it went well at first, it didn't turn out well at the end as the ambassadors helped destroy our fleet. We got one of the ambassadors though at the end. Was a big plus. Edit. A silver. Thank you, kind stranger. Had a cop once follow me for about 20 minutes at 3 AM because my friend in the passenger seat knocked on the window of the car beside us at a stoplight. We knew the person in the car, that's why he did it. Cop finally pulls us over on some random country roadway outside town. He couldn't even remember why he stopped us because he had been following us for so long. When I asked him why he followed us for so long rather than just stopping us right away, he said, "Man, it's 3 in the morning. That's how long it took me to wake up the dispatch guy to call this in." Eventually he remembered why he stopped us and we just said we knew the guy and he was like, "Oh okay," and left. Other time I got pulled over for driving too slow down a hill. On big hills I usually just downshift and let it roll rather than burn out my brakes, and the look of shame on the cop's face that he didn't think of that and immediately assumed I was drunk was kind of funny, but he was pretty young, probably not much older than me, so I kinda felt bad for the guy. Not a police officer. But once I saw someone drive around in a roundabout for an hour. Full stop. Somebody I knew would go to a store and find stuff he wanted to steal. Instead of walking out with it, he'd throw it in the trash and come back at night to dumpster dive for it. Dumpster diving is legal here. You can turn left on a red light from a one-way street to another one-way street in most states and provinces. For us Canadian boys, you need to stop and yield just like a right turn on a red light. It does seem illegal when you do it though. I told a cop to get off her phone while driving. Turns out cops are legally allowed to use digital devices in performance on their duties while driving in Ontario. They don't get special training either. I was patrolling down a fairly steep neighborhood and I saw a man running in his underwear. I don't know if that's nudity or not. Having sex with animals. This has always been pretty weird twist. Here hurting animals is considered animal abuse and is illegal. Also filming and selling animal porn is illegal. But act itself is not illegal. I have always wondered how they made such a distinct separation between filming sex with animals being illegal but having sex with animals not being illegal. So I am not a cop, but I was the receiving end of a relevant situation. In high school we'd just gotten our licenses and we were being stupid kids and we behaved stupidly. We were speeding at night in a van. So much intact we bottomed out, sent sparks flying. Anyway, the cop pulls us over, thinking we were shooting fireworks out of the windows, and technically we were out past curfew. Anyway, I had a small black pouch in my hands that I kinda instinctively drew in. The cop noticed and demanded to know what was in the pouch. To which I replied, magic cards sir. He looked at them and then looked at me like he'd have respected me more if it had been crack. Once saw a police officer who shoved a tennis ball into the gas pump handle to keep it pumping gas while he went into the convenience store. Seems like a serious fire hazard. Not a cop, but I still get sketched out whenever I smoke CBD weed here in Indiana. It's federally legal, but it looks and smells almost exactly the same, and even when carrying the test results I feel like it won't be enough for some power tripping discount gym teacher. Not a PO, but wearing double denim, my lord. I love this question because it highlights a pretty huge problem in the US. Why are our cops not required to know the laws they enforce? But we need to know them in a police encounter. In 1983, a local cop pulled over a guy for having a cow in the backseat of a Chevrolet Chevette. I'm not sure why he was pulled over. There's no law that says you can't have a cow in a Chevette. Me and the wife got pulled over for a broken headlight. Said cop was known by most as Rob Orch. Justifiable name, she was a jerk. I told her I work at Lowe's, have weird hours, and finally had some spare time to fix it. She was cool with that. I told some joke, she laughed. Didn't know she could. I thought I was good. She says I just need to run your license to see if you have any warrants. I look at the wife and say run. Looking back, probably not the best way to get more laughs out of a cop. She almost pulls her gun on us while my wife is yelling at me. She says now I have to run hers. While she is running our licenses, the wife is still yelling. She comes back, hands us our licenses and just says yeah, don't ever do that again. Then walks off. Aggressive honking. Attorney, but still. I was kinda surprised when that came across my desk. Just talked about this today at the bar. They, the police, are paying more attention to not drink alcohol in public places in Amsterdam center at the moment. A lot of the old houses in Amsterdam neither have balconies or gardens, so lots of people just take out a seat and go sit on the street in front of the house when the sun is out. Apparently a neighbor got a €90 fine for drinking a glass of wine on a sunny Sunday while reading his newspaper in front of his apartment. Not a cop, but once when I was still in high school I ditched school with a bunch of friends and ended up being pulled over for a minor traffic violation. Now, I was a senior and was already 18 years old. Well, a cop is talking with my other friend who is also 18. After a 5-minute talk, the cop turns to me, the only other 18 plus of our group, and asked what my understanding of the truant law was. I told him I thought it was that if I am 18 I can't get a ticket for truancy. He smiles a bit and says that's what I thought, and didn't write us tickets. Drunk lady had many DUIs and got her license revoked. Drunk lady owns horses. Drunk lady rides horse to nearest bar. Too far to drive the mower, as she put it. Cops were unsure of what to do. I was on a ride along and we saw someone flick a butt out the window. Pulled the car over. My friend the cop was like, I know that's illegal, but can't remember the exact law broken. We figured littering obviously, but were sure there was something more specific and severe. Then I remembered the signs I saw while driving through the forest. Throwing burning material from a vehicle. Looked it up in his code book. Fine. $500. Can I come back to KFC 2 days later and refill my cup again? My teacher in law enforcement was a retired cop and he had several stories. One time while he was on duty, he got a call for 2 separate events that required his attention. When he had a guy in the backseat to bring in and told to wait patiently while he dealt with the second incident. Were close enough, I guess. When he had it settled and came back and the guy took a huge bite out of the inside of the door, a perfectly human jaw-shaped chunk was taken out of the interior and he demanded to know if the passenger did it. The guy simply shook his head while mouth was still full. One person was brought in for questioning, and you know those stories where they describe the news anchor as the suspect? Well, he apparently gave my teacher's description, which at the time he didn't notice thanks to back-to-back long shifts. He brought the picture to another cop because the guy who was described looked familiar. Gee, Roger, that's a great sketch of you. Who did that? He was less amused. One time he was driving down the highway and this driver who was drinking and driving at the time, I'd like to say late 80s early 90s, noticed him coming up from behind. So he panics due to all the beer he bought, which was enough for a party easily, and starts chucking them out one at a time. Of course, when he pulls him over and has to take him in, he cites him for littering per can. He said if the guy chucked them all out at once, it would be one hit for littering because it would be per case or bundle, but because he chucked individual cans, boom. Using blinkers in New York or Massachusetts. Edit. New Yorkers seem to think they're either optional or a sign of weakness. If a New Yorker sees them, they close the gap. There's defensive driving and there's being an asshole. Speaking of which, Massachusetts drivers either don't know how to use them correctly, or don't use them at all. I grew up in MA, and every time I visit my hometown, I play a game where I count the number of times that I see people use them correctly between the NHMA border and Boston. The average is 7. The highest I've seen is 17. Sometimes people just put their blinkers on and leave them on until they're careening into a different lane turns them off automatically. Driving a motorized sofa down the road to the store to buy beer. I honestly have no ducking clue how the courts will classify mobility sofas when it comes to traffic laws and open beer laws. Told the reclining driver same, and advised he treat his couch like a pedestrian and only drive on the sidewalk, without any open alcoholic beverages. Not a cop, but my high school campus officer says one of the other officers in our town cited a 3-year for indecent exposure. Because the kid dropped his pants and peed in bush at the park because there are too many people in the bathroom, not sure if all the toilets were in use or what. The report was thrown out, and as Officer B put it, that was the day I realized that officer had to go. He'd done some other stupid but citing a 3-year-old that had to pee and did it in a discreet spot was just proof he wasn't fit to have a badge or a gun. The guy was fired eventually over a different incident, but it took a lot of effort because of the union. Officer B probably shared too much info with us students, but he claimed it was because you are citizens and you need to be informed. A bad apple rots the barrel, and as a cop, you gotta be nothing but good apples or someone is gonna get hurt or worse. 1. Holding umbrella against the police during a protest. 2. Wearing a very weak helmet and a pair of goggles with a mask in the same protest. 3. Sending water and food for the protester, which are happening in Admiralty, Hong Kong these days and possibly in the very near future. Someone walking into the House of Parliament in a suit of armor, actually illegal. We used to drive our patrol at night looking only through binoculars. Is the stop sign 20 feet or 200 feet away? Who knows, wing it. We were under speed limit, it had to be illegal, blocked view act. It was just so much fun. P.S. We did it in an abandoned military base, no traffic. I have a question of my own. If you get pulled over, and a cop berates you constantly about your crime, do you know how fast you were going? Can you just tell him to shut up and give you the ticket so y'all can get on with your day? Not a police officer, but flew into a foreign city, I will not name, for an important morning business meeting. Luggage didn't make it and I had no business attire. Only place open at 6 AM was in the airport mall, airside. But I was already out, so I bought a fully refundable one-way ticket on the next flight home. Went through security, bought myself a suit and came back out through immigration and customs, and asked for a refund on the ticket. I was met by a number of large men in full combat gear with automatic weapons who greeted me by name and took me to a little room. They were convinced I had done something wrong but couldn't agree on who was going to arrest me on what charges. Police said I had violated airport security rules. Airport security said I had violated a customs law. Customs thought perhaps I had violated a law. After about an hour of the three of them arguing with each other in front of me, they finally figured out that the store hadn't charged me VAT on the suit as airside is VAT free. They considered charging me with smuggling, but realized how dumb that was and let me go. Went to the business meeting and closed the deal. Edit. They were mostly anxious that I had inadvertently made a mockery of their security theater and demonstrated that anyone can just walk in and out of one of the highest security airports in the world. Okay, so you know those signs on Halloween that say take one? Yeah, well, I saw the guy duck a watermelon. Just had this call yesterday. Homeless male places tent on public space and lives there. He drinks, plays loud music and disturbs the people around him by knocking on their doors late at night. Obviously the citizens who live in the houses nearby grow concerned and call police. In Washington, D.C., it's considered an encampment which isn't allowed. Yet the procedure for us is to basically ask nicely for him to leave. If that doesn't work, you have to call a phone number to report an encampment. They send a bunch of people out from behavioral health to homeless outreach and so on while also giving him 14 days to move on. If he still won't move, you call Department of Public Works, which can take weeks to respond out to move the belongings. I basically told the people who called that they were out of luck and to move out of DC. Not a cop, but see this often. Many states had laws to yield for pedestrians. Cyclists press the crossing indicator lights, hop back on their bikes, then take forever to cross the street. They should be walking their bicycles across the street, which would take less time instead of fumbling with the gears and stumbling while crossing. TLDR, you are no longer a pedestrian while riding a bicycle. You are in fact considered a motorist and can ride within the traffic. As a cyclist, you should be following traffic laws and cross when permitted on your bicycle, or dismount and use the pedestrian signal. Not a cop, but I wonder. During pollution spikes the speed limit is lowered from 130 km per hour to 110 km per hour to reduce emissions. And I just keep wondering if driving an electric car would allow me to keep driving at 130 without risking a fine. In high school, we were driving home from a party. We had a designated driver. We saw the cop pull out and start following us. His police lights were not on. He was just tailing us. RDD. Even though she was sober, was a nervous wreck. She drove the exact speed limit. No swerving. Complete stops for 3 seconds at every stop sign. After a few minutes, the police lights came on and we were pulled over. His reasonable cause to pull us over? We were driving too well for teenagers. I, inebriated in the back seat. Ask. So we're suspicious because we weren't breaking any laws? Yup. Yay. We didn't get cited for anything. He just wanted an excuse to check the driver for booze weed. Adult me now knows, anything he found would not have been enforceable. My parents bought a golf cart to use for daily commute when I was young. My little brother and I got dropped off at school every day in that thing. The police would regularly stop us, but didn't know if it was legal or not. This went on for a year. The newspaper even did a bit on it. Eventually, 2 friendly police officers were at our door with balloons for me and my brother, saying that they did some research and found out it was indeed illegal. Still a wholesome memory for me. My cousin made a left turn on red down a one-way street. I didn't know that was legal, so I was highly confused. Smoke inject their pills that they have a prescription for. As a rookie I was like, wait, you can't do that, can you? Lol. Not a cop, but going into a store and not buying anything feels hella illegal. What do I do with my hands?